Hey everyone, Eric here from Iowa Robot Fighting. So this is a completely different format than what we're used to, obviously. We would usually do a video about the build that was changed before going to the competition. However, with the time crunch that we had, I kind of had to spend every spare second up to leaving for the fight to rework my robot, get everything good to go. So I'm going to start this video with the changes that have been performed in Bad Touch. And as you can see right here, Bad Touch is my new robot, which you can catch up one of my older videos, the build process. It has, or had, a Brazilian drive weapon system in it, but that has since changed. So the first competition this year in Wisconsin, I ran a weapon arm that looked a little like this. The weapon would have the drive. Here, let me grab an actual completed one out of here. Here we go. The weapon would have a wheel here that would run against the weapon motor, and the weapon would spin up on top and would look a little something like this out the front of the robot. The problem that we've noticed, and you may have noticed from the recap, which was my last video on Bad Touch, is that this actually caused the speeds to be reduced on the weapon. And I ran some tests and confirmed that the weapon speed was only about 48 miles an hour, which actually seems like a lot, but it's really low when compared directly to some of the more successful robots. So I had to figure out a way to make this more powerful, and the fastest solution, after running a bunch of tests and realizing that I would have had to do a lot of custom machining and did some attempts to speed this up with bearings and different things like that, it really isn't going to work with the limited equipment I have in my shop. So I ditched the Brazilian drive concept, went straight to a simple weapon arm where the motor is mounted directly to it at an angle, and then decided to invest in some finger tech equipment. Three items in particular. One is this FingerTech 1100 kV motor, which is the recommended motor for the weapons that FingerTech puts out. The next were a pair of these weapon mounts, which allow for multiple points of contact and a direct connection to the outer casing of the motor, so it has a much more sturdy connection. And then third was one of these titanium 6-inch weapon blades. If you're a fan of this channel and have been around for a while, you'll know how much that pains me to move away from my 1071 high carbon steel weapons. But I felt that it was imperative to have a well-paired weapon and weapon motor. So that left the major changes to only being this weapon arm, so that way I could focus on the effectiveness of the overall robot and not fiddling with a temperamental sort of weapon system. So that being the case, you'll see what Bad Touch looked like in the upcoming review later in this video. But the other robot that was in was Maelstrom. Now, previous videos I had talked about planning to run some tests with Maelstrom, Evan's robot, and he only performed a few tests here, and we didn't actually have our practice bout, which was unfortunate because we were still kind of fumbling with how to make that robot work. I'll also break down Maelstrom's fights and what all happened there. So let's get into the fights at Mecha Melee, which is the competition we were at last weekend. The first fight for Bad Touch was up against Magma. Now this was a FingerTech Viper kit. He was a relatively young competitor, so not to say anything bad about him because he's a young competitor, still has a lot to learn. It was a relatively easy fight to try out my new weapon, which was a good thing. So I'll go ahead and play this video, and then I'll break down some of the things that went wrong.
Go! Magma comes out of the bottom. Oh! Bad Touch spinning up a little too fast, sending itself across the arena. Magma trying to keep its wedge towards the pot. Definitely wants to keep those googly-eyed barbers blading towards it. Looks like Bad Touch is having a little bit of trouble keeping his weapon at a speed that will keep it going. Uh-oh, it looks like a rubber band may have come off of Magma, losing a little bit of traction, but Bad Touch is having a little bit of trouble keeping itself oriented in the right direction. Oh, Magma gets a good pin on the wall. You can hold it for up to 10 seconds. Minute 30 remaining, showing some good control on Magma. All right, Magma releases Bad Touch from the wall. Bad Touch, while stuck on the wall, wasn't able to spin up its weapon. It looks like it may have lost a screw on the weapon. Oh, now Bad Touch has got a pin on Magma there. All right, there's the release, and Magma and Bad Touch are going to go around trying to be some more control. Both bots did some good hits to each other early. The armor of Magma allowed both bots having the trouble really getting a good lock on either one of them. 35 seconds on the clock. The pit will open at 20 seconds. At some point today, someone's going to fall in there, and it's going to be awesome. In the meantime, 25 seconds on the clock, and it looks like another pin from Bad Touch on Magma. The pit is now opening. All right, the pin is released. Magma does its best to maneuver back out of there, point its wedge, and control Bad Touch, whose weapon is broken. Bad Touch doing a good job of staying aggressive despite having some issues. Both bots doing a really good job. Only 4 seconds remaining on the clock. 3, 2, 1, and that's the match. Great job from both of our drivers. Give them a round of applause. All right, after judges' deliberation, they are going to award the victory to Bad Touch.
Okay, so as you can see, my weapon became detached in the fight. I did end up winning the fight against Magma, and that's why I said it was beneficial to me that I was going up against an early competitor. I was able to pin him about 3 times after my weapon fell off, and the reason my weapon fell off was because I was using the incorrect screws. This weapon mount didn't actually come with the necessary screws to be able to mount the weapon correctly. So I ended up using the same screws that I used to mount the motor to the top, which are like a 0.5 millimeter off, like even smaller than that, off in terms of size. They screwed in just fine, they felt right, but the instant I made contact, it ended up causing some major issues and breaking 3 of those away, leaving just one to hang the weapon at an odd angle off of my robot. Luckily, I had enough control with the new motors to be able to effectively control that fight. I was still nervous about my capabilities with Bad Touch, but with some control adjustments, I was in good shape. Second fight was against, well, technically my second fight was canceled due to forfeit. So I ended up with 2 victories, even though I only ended up fighting 1 robot. My second actual fight, which was my 3rd match, was against Bunnicula, which was controlled by Team Quinault. They're the ones who had hosted the original Minnesota competition that Evan and I attended when we first started our journey. So they had always wanted to fight us in actual matches, and this one turned out to be kind of interesting.
Go! Both bots spin up their weapons. Neither one of them really wants to take the hit to the side. Oh! Bad Touch takes a big hit, but it looks like it did some damage to the other side as well. Both bots are now going to be jockeying position, but unfortunately Bad Touch is going to have some maneuverability disadvantages. But it still has a very dangerous, large weapon on the front there. Bunnicula doing its best to try and get around to the sides. Really wants to cut off any mobility left in that box. Bad Touch doing its best to move, but is kind of stuck here in the corner for the moment. It is still moving around, unfortunately being inverted. They're doing their best to get. All right, they are slowly moving. They're still live in the match as they slowly work their way out of the corner as Bunnicula goes in and is trying to chip away at that last wheel, try and really take out all of the mobility. Less than a minute remaining on the clock. All right, looks like, yep, it's still moving, but unfortunately is having some issues getting out of that area. But it's enough movement that the judge is not counting them out. Bunnicula is still trying to go in for some damage. Oh, a good hit there, and now it looks like, oh, Bad Touch actually gets his weapon up and running. That pop gets it up. Oh, it's going up to full speed. It really wants to try and make up some ground after being stuck for a while. The pit is going to open in 5 seconds. Both these spots have been dangerously close to it. Oh! Bad Touch knows where it's at and sends itself into the pit.
So you saw immediately after that first hit, I lost a wheel. And the reason that is because I didn't check those wheels or add Loctite like I was supposed to my hubs. And what ended up happening was the vibration from the first fight wasn't checked against, and it ended up vibrating those screws loose, which meant that the impact caused that wheel to fly off. And then later you saw my second wheel fly off from my own impact as well. And then obviously it had a hilarious ending with me flying into the pit from my own weapon. I have a feeling I could have won that fight had I had control. When you have two weapons like that, though it gives you opportunities to strike in multiple ways, you don't have extreme focus in terms of where your weight is distributed, everything like that. So I had an advantage in terms of striking power. I just couldn't direct it. So that was my first loss of the day. And then I ended up in the loser's bracket and ended up fighting Team Quinault. Again, same driver. This match was against Craig.MP3, which was a titanium attached wedge bot with really large wheels. And you'll see just how that turned out.
Go! Both bots come flying out of the box. Craig.MP3 comes in to try and get a collision right into the wall, while Bad Touch was trying to spin up its weapon. That first pin is being counted down by the judge. Oh, they release. Bad Touch spins up its weapon, wants to really hit anywhere but that wedge if it can. Glancing blows send sparks everywhere. Oh, some more hits. Craig.MP3 trying to be aggressive with its heavily armored front. Both bots doing a good job of jockeying for position here. Oh, you can see that Bad Touch got a big chunk of Craig's wheel. Craig's not giving Bad Touch any space to spin back up, but it looks like, oh, got it up for a second. Definitely a good hit, some sparks flying everywhere. Once again, Bad Touch is trying to go for the wheels, get some more wheel. But unfortunately, Craig.MP3 has plenty of wheel to give. That's a little too much, though. That's one wheel. Oh, there goes the other one. It's in pieces. The countdown happens, but that bot ain't moving anymore.
So early on, I knew I had to go for the wheels. There was no option here. There's no way I was going to get through that titanium wedge. I was just going to end up continuously being deflected. And that box rush that came out right in the beginning allowed him to pin me. But what he didn't do was pin my weapon. So the instant my weapon was freed up, I was able to spin and make contact with that wheel, which gave me the insight I needed to be able to carry that fight to its conclusion. I then started going for separation, trying to get at those wheels more effectively, and as you saw one more time, once I got up on that wedge, I hit the correct angle and threw one of his wheels off, and then about 2 or 3 seconds later whipped around the back and ripped the last one off, and it was counted as a KO. great victory. I really respect Team Quinault's capabilities of developing multiple robots and interesting designs. Keep it up. I love the fact that we had traded victories. It makes it all interesting, and the next time we fight, we'll see if you come out on top. This is tradition in terms of the Midwest Fighting Leagues. Whenever there is a weapon or piece of equipment or anything like that that goes down in a fight and ends up getting destroyed to the point where it's just going to be trash anyway, it's very meaningful to the victor to have a war trophy. And Team Quinault gave me one of the wheels that I ripped to shreds, which from this point on will end up being a trophy up on my wall, along with all the other pieces of robots and little participation awards and different things like that, until I get my first placing trophy in one of these competitions. I'll have to settle for some of these little war trophies. So that was an interesting fight in and of itself. Let's go to fight 4. This one was against Unstable Isotope.
Go! Bad Touch has a horizontal spinner. Isotope has a vertical spinner. Oh, that means that we're going to have some sparks as these two bots launch into each other. Oh, that's it, that's it. We got smoke in the arena. That's a knockout for Unstable Isotope.
So, as you can see, that was over really fast. I believe it was something like 10 seconds and a single hit. You can see from some of these photos that things really got burnt up. There was some major damage inflicted, and the whole reason that happened was because of the overall design of the weapon arm and the supports that were given. So we made weapon-to-weapon contact, and he bent my robot back on itself. So that weapon arm ended up bending. So that weapon arm bent and ended up causing the robot to have a major deflection of this directly into my electronics. And the photo I showed before with the speed control depicts very easily what had happened. You can actually see inside the robot where that speed control was sitting and burned up. The battery itself nearly exploded, which would have been a devastating sort of issue that would have occurred inside that match. Luckily, we noticed that the smoke was not falling back to the floor, which that's what happens with lithium fires. The lithium smoke, once it cools a little bit, will settle to the floor immediately, which meant we simply had an electronic failure. But major changes will be coming to Bad Touch, the overall body design and chassis, to ensure that that doesn't happen. Now, I had an unlucky turn of events when it came to the opponents that I ended up fighting that put me up against a vert spinner that had that much power. Had I gone up against lower power vert spinners or horizontal spinners, I might have had a better shot at making it closer to some of those top spots. But overall, I ended up taking 14th out of 48 or 49 bots at this competition, which wasn't bad after coming off of a instantaneous loss in Wisconsin. So this one's kind of trashed, and you can actually also see here I ended up swapping away from my homemade hubs and moved to my FingerTech hubs, which I might be using more regularly from now on, as I haven't seen as much hub damage as usual. So I'm having to go way back and realize that I was looking for an inexpensive solution. However, because of the quality that you can get from parts from FingerTech, I'm probably going to be giving a few more recommendations in that way. That's not to say go out and buy kits. I'm not advocating for that unless you don't have any tools whatsoever. But I'm likely going to be running a lot more finger tech niche parts inside my robots from now on. Okay, so bad touch aside, let's get to Maelstrom. So Maelstrom's first fight was up against Scraper. Now, Evan had a whole bunch of electronics issues prior to weigh-in. He had just barely gotten his robot up and running and actually functional. He broke a bunch of parts while trying to get it ready to go, and he was just happy to have a robot functional by the time his first fight occurred. And of course, his first fight was against Team Quinault and their bot, Scraper. So Scraper was an overhead grabbing bot, and this fight I'll break down a little bit more after the footage.
Oh! All right, both bots coming out. That spinner is spun up. Looks like Scrapper's got a big wall of armor there trying to keep itself from getting too badly hit. Maelstrom is doing its best to get a good hit on some of the weak spots. Oh! Going in for a good hit on the back as it spins up its weapon again. Scrapper looking to try and control the match with its teeth is currently driven up on top of Maelstrom. Maelstrom backs out of there, is able to get free. Scrapper now trying to eat the side of the arena. All right, looks like he might be. He gets free. Looks like Maelstrom's all spun up, ready to get another hit in there. Both bots jockeying for position, trying to keep their stuff forward. Looks like Scrapper manages to absorb the blow and then pin Maelstrom into the side using its jaws to hold on to that. The judge is counting down the pin. All right, Maelstrom comes flying back out of there and tries to buy. Yep. All right, there we go. Both bots are now back into the middle, trying to jockey for position again. It looks like Maelstrom may have lost some movement. Something must have gotten knocked loose when he got hit into the wall. There's a judge countdown going on now. All right, that's a knockout. Scrapper will win the match.
So because of the electronics issues, it being an untested bot, he had a whole bunch of problems going into this arena against Scrapper. Now, the interesting thing was, if you were listening closely, and I'll play the sound here again.
Going in for a good hit on the back as it spins up its weapon again. Scrapper looking to try and control the match with its teeth. Is currently
continuously restarting, losing power, restarting again, and over again. As it turned out, his safety switch that you see us turn on in the beginning via a screwdriver or an electric screwdriver was giving intermittent power and needed to be adjusted, or the screw needed to be replaced, which ended up happening after this fight. But you saw that he lost power mid-fight and was counted as a knockout, which was unfortunate, but probably could have been caught had Evan done some more testing in our test box rather than sitting on his laurels after ensuring that the bot was built. Lesson learned. Okay, fight 2 against Wilder Jr. Let's go ahead and show that footage now. So that was a hard loss for Evan. You saw him lose his weapon very similar to how I did in the first fight, but his is for a different reason altogether. I'll talk about that in a second. Evan was not pleased with the judge's decision on this one, but it's one of the main adages of robot fighting. If you can help it, never let it go to the judges, because when you do, you might end up with a decision like this. Though he had lost his weapon, by my count, he had 3 pins to Wilder Jr.'s 0. The whole reason it was counted as a loss for Evan was because he lost his weapon, which was declared as damage. So he had a very similar fight to my own in that, and 2 different judges' decisions there, which was interesting. I think it was because Scraper Jr. had slightly better control over his own bot, but who knows? I would have to talk to the judges to find out what their decision process was to know for sure. But what you can tell again by sound in this footage, which I'll play here, you can hear Evan's robot weapon loosen after that first hit. And immediately here you can see Wilder Jr. just barely come underneath that weapon and lift the weapon away. And that was because Evan forgot to properly tighten his retention screw on that weapon itself. So away the weapon went and he was done. Evan spent the majority of the time after that acting as my pit crew. After my damage in fight 2, yes, fight 2, he actually ended up tearing down that robot to get me spare parts because I was running low on weapon motors. So the day was kind of a wash for Evan, but he learned a lot about the process. That's one of the big things when it comes to anything in terms of competitions like this. Always be watching for process improvements, and he learned a valuable lesson in terms of ensuring that his screws were actually in place. And same here, I had issues that were very similar. We now will have a completely different process for next season. So that wraps up this video. Next time around, I will be talking about the overall improvements that will be getting done for Bad Touch, and the upcoming August 26th fights here in Des Moines. We will be having the IRFC coming on August 26th. At this point, we still have beetle weight slots available for that competition. The ant weight slots have been filled up within the first 90 minutes. So that was the most successful prepaid competition we ever could have hoped for, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody. So with that, everybody be safe out there, and we'll catch you next time.